Welcome to the Quality Conversation brought to you by Resume Wallet. This show is all about discussing what quality means in the talent acquisition ecosystem. I'm your host, Serge Boudreau, and today Julie Falls joins me. And Julie is the founder of Julie Falls Consulting, really apt name, and was most recently the Chief People Officer at Terracon Geotechnique. Julie, welcome.
Good to see you, Serge.
Always a pleasure to see you. So I've known you for quite a long time, but how about you give a brief intro and what was your journey into HR and talent acquisition?
Yeah, so I'm not going to tell you how many years ago it was because that's going to age me. But I fell into recruitment back in London a number of years ago, and I fell into recruitment on the agency side. So I was running a really busy temp desk for a few years and just absolutely loved it. I'd previously been fired from another organization before that was a data analyst role. Now, Serge, you know me well enough to know I don't do the numbers and I don't do spreadsheets. So when I came into this recruitment role, it just fit me so perfectly. And I love recruitment.
The passion is obvious from working with you and seeing exactly what you prioritize in HR. It's obvious. You know what I find interesting is, obviously, I know a lot of folks in the UK, and most of the people in the UK that are in this industry all started in staffing, in the recruitment agency side of it. Tell me a little bit about recruitment agencies in the UK. It seems like they grind.
It is a much bigger industry in the UK than it is in Canada, for sure.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I first started in my role, I used to work on Oxford Street, right bang in the middle of central London. And it was so competitive. There were 200 agencies on that one street from one end to the other. So agencies really are seen as an extension of HR teams in the UK. There are phenomenal HR teams and talent acquisition teams in-house, but agencies and exec search firms really are seen as that partner and that extension. So it's a really good partnership.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's definitely, and I've heard that before as far as how competitive it is. And it's even more aggressive than the US market from what I've been told as far as the scale of it and how aggressive in sales recruitment agencies are. So fascinating.
Yeah. There's even recruitment to recruitment agencies here. They staff recruiters for agencies.
That's pretty meta in that sense.
Yeah.
But then your career progressed, and most recently you've led large HR organizations, most recently at Terracon Geotechnique. I'm curious a little bit as far as what perspective you take now as a leader, a chief people officer, when you're looking at talent acquisition. Where does it fit in the whole HR landscape as far as priority and importance?
It's integral. It's almost priority number one. And when we look at business and we look at business strategy, particularly in the kind of organizations that I've worked in that are very people resource heavy, project heavy, without people, the business strategy cannot be executed. So it's priority number one. And it has to be seen as not just an HR accountability. It's every single leader's accountability to get that right.
Interesting, because that is one of the challenges that talent acquisition has always had as far as just looking at the speed and efficiency of the department. A lot of it relies on the hiring manager and how quickly hiring managers get back to you, how quickly they schedule interviews. So obviously, as a chief people officer, you want to get your team functioning as quickly and most efficient as possible. How do you work with hiring managers so they see how important this is to the overall organization?
I think a lot of it is translating it into language they understand, and what's the opportunity cost of not having that person contributing to their teams. What does that do to the rest of their team with the extra work that they've got to take on? And then we look at the opportunity cost of just putting a body in the seat as opposed to the right hire. So getting clarity really early on is integral to speed. I've seen too many searches go wrong where a hiring manager just find me someone that can do this list of tasks, and you spend 3 months interviewing because they can't find the right person. So clarity at the start of the process is critical.
Or there's always someone better in their mind too, which is always
like these three, but we'll just go and interview some more.
Let's see some more.
I have that much time.
that was too easy for you. You got 3 in a week. What?
That's right.
One of the things that I focus a lot is overall on quality. And you talk a lot about self-awareness in coaching and leadership as being critical. How does that principle of self-awareness translate to identifying and hiring high quality talent?
So I'm a big proponent of the fact leaders need to lead themselves first before they can lead others.
Yeah.
And when you translate that into the recruitment space, the hiring of talent, leaders need to be aware of their biases, things that they may have an opinion on that may not serve the hiring process, and making sure they're making good hiring decisions, but allowing themselves to be challenged by the recruiter, by anybody else in the interviewing process, whoever that is. That awareness is critical.
Yeah.
And being aware that it's okay to hire somebody who may know more than you and to take ego out of that process. I think that's critical from a self-awareness perspective. Take the ego out and make sure you're adding to the culture, not just finding a culture fit, because then everybody looks the same, sounds the same, thinks the same. It takes a lot to challenge yourself to find somebody that is a little bit different, that can bring some diverse thinking to the table and help grow the team in that space.
I think self-awareness is extremely interesting because one of the things in many years of doing this that I've seen with hiring managers and even recruiters, we make the assumption that we're great at picking people. We're great at interviewing, even though we haven't received any training. We have our pet questions. Self-awareness is a challenge across the board, especially because, I don't know, everyone thinks they can recruit. Everyone thinks they can hire. And
it's
as
easy,
you
right?
know, that's not the case. How would you work with hiring managers? Like you mentioned, ego. Sometimes they do have a little bit of ego, as we all do.
Yeah.
How do you kind of line them up being like, well, maybe if we followed this interview process instead and we followed these guidelines, we would be judging all the candidates on the same things. Like, how do you create this self-awareness with those hiring managers?
So I think it's getting them to talk about their strategy and what they want for their business. And how does this recruitment of this role, this person going to impact their strategy? The only constant we have in business is change. We know that. They know that. And it's finding the skill set and the attributes that are going to be able to contribute to that. And sometimes you just have to get quite direct with them. As you know, Sandra can be quite direct.
Of course.
Hold people to park their ego and try it a different way.
Yeah. And as they get the results, because the results will be better eventually, like it does play out, right? Then that's really how you get buy-in. I don't know if you're aware of what's going on in the marketplace right now. There's obviously a mismatch in the skills that are out there. We're seeing what I call sit-down roles, or a lot of knowledge type work.
Yeah.
Be in a position that there's a lot of applicants applying for those jobs, sometimes hundreds and thousands. As the other side of the coin is the stand-up job. So the more blue collar, those types of roles, there's a lot of job openings out there. A lot of people want to hire, but less candidates in that sense. So I know you're used to hiring both. Have you seen that? Have you seen like a huge influx on more white collar roles and challenge getting blue collar roles?
Yes, I have. On those technical boots on the ground type roles, there's certainly a lack of candidates that are coming up for those positions. They're generally technical roles for the most part that I've had experience with anyway. And a lot of it, I think, is because those types of positions haven't been pushed at the school level, at the education level. And I think that's a big contributor to that. So it's really important for leaders in our field and leaders in operations to be showcasing those roles and showcasing the success people can have in those careers. But there is a definite shift between expectations with what people are looking for.
Have you had the situation where you had hundreds apply for a role? Like more in your office type roles?
Yeah, so I've absolutely seen that for sure. If you're putting an administrator type position out, and within 2 or 3 hours, you're probably already into 3 figures in terms of candidates. And a lot of that is the ease of applying through some of the systems that we utilize. And easy apply means people can just shoot off an application without really thinking about it.
Yeah, I actually had a survey out on LinkedIn about this recently because I'm starting to see or get the feeling that most people are not reading the job description before applying. They're just clicking easy
Yeah.
apply, easy apply.
Yeah.
If they get a response back, then they do a little bit of research. They look at the job description. They go look in the career page. And we've conditioned them in this way because easy apply has changed everything. There used to be a ton of friction. We removed it completely. So it's really easy to apply. And what happens as well is they're not hearing back. So they're not taking the time to really do any research until they hear back because they've been conditioned to apply 100 times, 200 times before they hear back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next little while. Have you seen the tools out there, what I call the lazy AI apply tools, where you apply to 1,000 jobs with one click? Have you come across that at all?
I haven't seen those. The most experience I have with AI from a recruitment perspective on the application side is what LinkedIn does now for you. We'll write your resume based on the role, or will tell you your success levels. And I haven't heard of what you're saying. It sounds scary to me. Interestingly, when we put accountability on our hiring leaders to choose quality, but there's hundreds of resumes to choose from, there's no way that they can extract quality out of that because they simply don't have the time.
No.
So we have to find ways of presenting quality to them from a pre-screening perspective that allows them to do that. And recruitment is an art to me and not a science. I don't ever believe that the algorithms can or should be making hiring decisions. We are hiring people. There needs to be that person-to-person connection in the process.
Oh, I agree completely. And I think if we're looking at what's happening even in the sales marketing with so much AI generated content, that human relationship and contact is a differentiator now. I truly feel like if you really want to be good in recruitment or sales or marketing, that is the differentiator. So I guess
go old school with it.
Yeah, but putting that in perspective, so say you're getting like 100, 200, 300 applicants as a recruitment team, that is a little bit overwhelming as well. We're on the same page. I don't think AI should ever make a hiring decisions, but what's your feelings around candidate matching, scoring, ranking based on AI tools so the recruiters can focus on the top ranking ones?
Yeah, I've certainly seen that, and it can be used well, for sure. I've seen some really good systems that do that, others not so much, where they're not as refined as they could be. I always worry that we miss people through that process because they've not optimized their resume sufficiently with the keywords and that kind of thing. So yes, they're great tools to be able to create efficiency and take some of the tension away for those recruiters. I've seen things like the AI chatbots to communicate with candidates. I don't know how I feel about that one, Serge. Just taking that human connection out of it for me.
Yeah, I've seen recently, it was a little bit scary. It was an AI pre-screen tool. They do the pre-screen and it ranks those candidates. So basically you get 100 applicants. All of them are sent a link to do the pre-screen with an AI bot or a real person. It's basically like kind of a one-way video interview, but it's an AI.
Horrendous.
The experience just seems, I agree. It's like, there's no way I'd like to be doing that, but I have not done it. So I'm still open to seeing what that means, but
I've done it from the candidate perspective, not as the hiring company. And it is a horrendous experience to go through from a candidate perspective.
It does dehumanize. It feels like a little bit.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. And I may just be of an age where I'm too old for it, and my kids may embrace that kind of thing, but it just felt so impersonal, and I'm not sure how it added value to the process.
Where do we go from here, though? Like, obviously, a lot has changed in the last 5 years. I see it changing even more. I think we're going to be in an employer market for the foreseeable future, but I'm going to get you to take out your crystal ball.
Okay.
So say 5 years from now, Is how we hire and recruit going to change dramatically?
I don't think so. I think some of the tools we use will change dramatically,
Yeah.
but I don't think how we do it will ultimately change. I mean, I'm going to so date myself now. When I started recruiting, I used to receive resumes by fax.
Yeah.
And I used to find my clients by calling up from the yellow pages. So that's how old I am. So the tools have changed between then and now, but the
Yeah.
actual fundamentals of recruiting have remained the same. And I think they will continue to remain the same, but be refined through the technology that we use.
I guess that raises the question. So in the last 20 years, there have been dramatic shift, right? Like we saw the advent of job boards,
Yeah,
ATS, all of those things. I wasn't in recruitment when all of this came out, right? But I was applying for jobs, and I remember applying for
sure.
jobs with a fax machine.
There you go.
Um, if we look at all the changes and then we went back to say early 2000, is hiring and recruiting in a better shape now than it was then? Like, I think there's the argument that it was actually more efficient and quicker during those years than it
Um,
is now.
yep. Yes, because there was had to be more thought into handwriting your cover letter and attaching it to your fax. So you weren't going to
Yeah.
fire off 30 applications in an hour like you can do now.
It's changed dramatically, and
Yeah.
it really brings me to, we're all striving for quality when it comes to, we want quality candidates, we want
Yeah.
quality hires. But I'm curious, throughout your career, how have you measured, if first of all, if a candidate is quality, and then if they're hired, like how do you look back at it? Do you have a plan,
Yeah.
a process that you've worked with before being like, okay, that was a quality hire?
That's a good one. I always talk about the values of an organization, how important they are. And back to that emotional intelligence with the hiring leader, it's holding themselves accountable to hiring for the right values for the candidate coming into the organization. And skills can be taught, we know that. Having the right
Yeah.
attitude, having the right disposition towards how they conduct themselves and align themselves with values is what's going to make someone successful. So again, that clarity right at the beginning, the coaching of the hiring leader to be able to make those decisions around the values is what ultimately is going to make the hire successful. I've seen too often where hires have been made where somebody is technically great, but absolute pain in the behind when they come to sit in the desk.
Yeah.
And that disengages everybody else. So
Or
technically they could be producing a huge amount of work, but if they're disengaging the rest of the team, that is not a quality hire. That's a poor quality hire. So aligning with values has to start. That's the huge part of that for me. Managers have to live and breathe that, and they have to be able to test candidates for that and the way they make their decisions.
yeah, I
Then it's
know.
all the other metrics, the standard HR metrics.
Have you ever measured quality of hire like as a metric itself?
Yes, but informally rather
Yeah.
than because it's been very subjective to me from a quality of hire perspective in the types of organizations. So I think it would be probably easier in a sales role, for example, where you could measure how much business they're bringing in, what's that quality looking like, repeat business, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do all of those kinds of things, but a lot of it is quite intangible.
Agreed. I think quality of hire is one that's always been subjective. There's
Yeah.
some movement towards being more objective and having hard metrics around it, but I still don't think we're there. I still think
Yeah.
it's one of like the unicorns we're trying to achieve in HR and talent acquisition that we might never. But I'm sure there's tools or companies out there that are trying to achieve that.
There
And
is. There's the one question for me is asking the hiring manager 2 years later, would they hire that person again?
yes.
That is probably the easiest way to find out whether that's been a quality hire.
And that is challenging, right? Because there's so much movement, right? All of these things get lost in some ways
That's
over
right.
years,
That's
right?
right.
And it does,
Yeah.
it's not seen as a priority after the fact. But looking at quality overall, I think one of the things I've seen with a lot of organizations, especially ones that are scaling really, really quickly, quality kind of goes out the window for just having bums in the seats,
Yeah.
right? So, as someone who leads organizations at a high level, what's your advice to HR leaders when it comes to okay, you're growing quickly, but how do you maintain those high recruitment standards?
Yeah, so I think sometimes you need to sort of slow down to speed up.
Mm,
And the hiring leaders need to understand that as well, that it's better to take a couple more weeks to find the perfect fit, or the 90% fit,
yeah.
than get a bum in a seat in 2 days. It's only going to meet 50% of what you need, because you have the ongoing attrition cycle. We've all seen that happen. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice I coach my teams on, and I coach hiring leaders on. It's take your time to find the right person for what you need. Now, that doesn't mean you interview and find 6 great people and then extend it for another 3 months. It's when you find your 6 great people, hire them.
Yes, I've said this before. You can't recruit yourself out of bad retention. So you got to
That's
make sure
right.
you're making those decisions. If you're always on that
Yeah,
hamster wheel, hiring, they're gone, hiring, it just creates so much work for no reason
that's
and
right.
very expensive, bad candidate experience. Like it doesn't suit.
Reputationally, it's awful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I have some rapid fire questions for
Go on
you.
then.
And so I want to jump into to know a little bit more about Julie and what you're
Sure.
kind of thinking outside of work.
Yeah.
So, is there a book that you have read that's changed your perspective on business or HR? Anything you'd recommend?
Yeah, I was talking to someone else about this earlier today. It's called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman.
I have
The
never heard
premise
of.
is, the premise is, if we live to the age of 80, we have roughly 4,000 weeks. I found it really profound, both from a professional and personal perspective. Our time is finite, it's limited, and there are choices that must be made. We cannot do everything. We are not here long enough to do everything. So we have to be really laser focused and we're fully engaged in what we are doing. So that was a really profound one for me. And it's a good read. I recommend it.
I definitely am going to go get that one. I've
Yeah.
never heard of it. So that's why I
Yeah.
love doing this segment on this show because I learn new things. Do you have a favorite podcast or TV show series that you're completely addicted to?
So podcast is on the fitness side. It's a guy called Jordan Syatt.
Oh,
So
I've heard of him. Yeah.
he's phenomenal. I just love listening to him and following on Instagram as well. And so you get all the really good fitness advice, but he also rips apart all the nonsense that's out there about diet and fitness and nutrition. And he's just such an entertaining listen to. I really like him.
I love it. I love it. I don't think I've ever listened to his podcast, but I follow him on Instagram as
Yeah,
well. And
yeah, he's pretty good.
yeah, he is really good. Where can people find you? What's the easiest way if they want to get a hold of you to find out more about Julie Falls
Yeah,
Consulting or just overall talk about HR and talent acquisition? How
yeah.
should
Find me on
reach out to
LinkedIn.
you?
My website is a work in progress, but find me on LinkedIn. I'm wide open to have those conversations. They're always fun.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. I'm glad we've done
Thank
this. I
you.
can't believe we've never recorded a podcast together before. I've known you for a long time, but your
Yeah.
insights were great. Do you have a one line or something to close out this session that the people listening can leave and be like, that was Julie Falls. She gave me great advice.
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure I'm that good at one-liners, Serge, to be honest with you. I slow down to speed up. I think that's take some time. Our time is finite, so take time with it and don't rush it.
I put you on the spot and you came up with something really good. So it tells me how quick you think on your feet. Julie, such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Always, Serge. Thank you so much.
Thank you.